Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. It's a
وعليكم
very good
السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
it's a very good afternoon from Bandung, Indonesia, West Java. And today also we have our brother Namungo Hamzah MBA, the head of research and training, House of Zakat Wakaf Uganda from Uganda. So inshallah, today we are going to talk about Ramadan during COVID-19 pandemic. So when we are talking about coronavirus, so up to date, according to worldometer.info, uh, the worldwide cases of COVID-19 reached to 3,579,479, which more than 200,000 of people have died to this virus. So this is beyond challenging for all of us in the world, particularly for us as Muslim, because now we are Ramadan and at the same time we are facing COVID-19. Inshallah, today we are going to talk about this topic, and particularly we are going to explore how zakat, in especially in Uganda, have been contextualized, has been utilized in facing the consequences of COVID-19. I am Fahmi Hudaefi, and I am from BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies. So, ladies and gentlemen, sisters and brothers, thank you for you join. So today we are live from two countries. We are planning. We plan from three countries: from Indonesia, Uganda, and Sierra Leone. But we are still waiting for our brother from Sierra Leone. Our brother, Mr. Corona. I think he is still on the way. The signal is still on the way, but it's fine. So let's going. All right. Uh, And then, all right, so Fuskas Basnas, actually, we have the program, we have the call for papers. So it is the International Journal of Zakat. We have the call for papers for the volume number 5 and number 1 for 2020 edition. So the call for papers, we expect to receive the submission from papers that are addressed the topic of zakat, such as financial resources of zakat institution, the contribution of zakat to the sustainability of clean water and proper sanitation, and then a study that measure uh, the muzaki's ability in zakat literacy, and also we are looking for a paper that address the role of zakat in mitigating the apostasy, and also the development of zakat literature. Next word, we're also looking for paper who address the use of relevant technology in the recent Zakat administration worldwide, not only Indonesia, but also in other countries like Malaysia, maybe Uganda. So moving to that, we also receive, we also expect a study that overview that perform literature review about the concept of zakatomics. Also, we all expect the paper that address the topic of international contribution among zakat institution to address the issue of global poverty. Yes, like sustainable and development goal, how zakat in many countries, mostly in Muslim majorities countries, to assist the respective government strategies in implementing the sustainable development goals or in achieving such SDGs. And also a special issue, a special topic of mapping the indicators of Indonesia's zakat potential. Also, this is the topic that we are looking for. So, and then also Puskas Basnas, we are going to conduct the International Conference of Zakat. So it's going to be the fourth icon. So means that the fourth icons is the number four icons. It's the fourth year of the International Conference of Zakat that inshallah will be conducted in Surabaya, East Java on October 7 until 9, 2020. So what will be the topic for the fourth International Conference of Zakat? Inshallah, we are going to address Zakat Tech for Inclusive Development. So this Zakat Tech for Inclusive Development is going to address how Zakat administration, how technology being practiced in Zakat administration worldwide that can address the inclusive development. There are many topics. So we have 6 topics for the fourth international conference of Zakat, including we have the topics of coronavirus, the recent coronavirus. I mean, how Zakat in the world has been addressed to tackle the COVID-19. So inshallah, that's about the International Conference of Zakat and about the call papers. Hopefully, audience, wherever you are, you can submit, you can join, you can submit your paper on Zakat. Also, paper on Zakat, you can address how Zakat been contextualized or been utilized to mitigate, to mitigate or to face off the consequence of COVID-19, like poverty and everything. And also, hopefully, you can also join the call for papers free of charge, the fourth icon. So it's supposedly from October 7 to 8, 2020, not 2019. That's just a mistake, but that's fine. All right. So we just begin with what we are going with what we have about call for paper and the international conference of zakat. So now let's go to our brother in Uganda, Mr. And also hopefully you can
Okay.
Mr. Namungo Hamzah. All right.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Namungo Hamzah. So Mr. Namungo Hamzah is the head of research and training in halls of zakat and wakaf in Uganda. Mr. Namungo?
Yes, brother.
Okay, Mr. Namungo, what time is now in Uganda?
It's 13 minutes past midday.
Oh, it's
It's 12
midday.
p.m.
So,
Midday.
how many hours to breakfast time? How many hours
Around
more?
6 hours and some 40 minutes, some
Okay,
35 minutes around. Yes,
all right.
but we
So
are
you
still
need.
strong.
Oh, you still
Still
strong. So
strong.
hopefully, so hopefully, so
Mm.
thank you for joining us. And then thank you.
You're
We are
welcome.
now speaking on behalf of World Zakat Forum Youth. So we are youth, and then we expect the innovation of Zakat for the innovation in Zakat management or in Zakat practice in the world. So when we all talking about facing of COVID-19 during coronavirus outbreak, so would you explain more how Uganda, how what is the reason, what is the current situation of COVID-19 in Uganda? Mr. Namungo, please explain.
Okay. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Thank you, brother Zaifi, for on behalf of the World Zakat Forum for hosting me right from Kampala, Uganda. As we speak now, Uganda has 89 cases of COVID-19. Yesterday, there were 88, but just a few hours from now, we had another case, making it 89. This case is from a Kenyan truck driver who crossed into Uganda, and when they tested around 2,700 samples, his sample came back positive. So right now we have 89 cases, but in total we had around 89 cases we have, and 52 cases recovered already. 52 cases recovered, and active cases is 37. We are yet to register any death from COVID-19. That's the current situation now. And another thing, the reason why I'm mentioning a Kenyan truck driver, not a Ugandan, is because when the president or the government locked down the country, they left some sectors to operate, and one of them was truck drivers or cargo entering to Uganda. Plane and truck cargo was left open to operate. because most of a portion of Uganda's population feed off the port of Mombasa in many areas, but 12% of our population, or 12% of the food consumption we take, is imported from that route of Kenya, Uganda border. So most of the cases we're having now, actually a week between, it's from the truck drivers from Kenya into Uganda. So this brother, or this COVID patient, was taken back to Kenya, and hopefully they will register him now as a Kenyan case. But in terms of cases, case by case basis, Uganda had to register him as one of the cases we had in Uganda. So the current situation now is a bit cold, it's a bit quiet, streets are empty, and business is not as usual. As I've mentioned earlier, that many sectors were closed. Health was left open, hospitals, government hospitals, private ones were left open, but since private hospitals deal with cash, they are not government hospitals, of course we expect patients to decline because they have to use cash, they have to use vehicles. Ambulances were left to move, but private vehicles were banned to move unless you're given a sticker from the Ministry of Transport and Works. So the private sector is at loss, very quiet. The public sector, of course, you would say it's operating, but most of the sectors that operate are those that deal with the consumption actually, because Ministry of Health is working, but they're treating people freely because it's government. Those who are selling food, they are operating, but they have seen their sales declining because what people had hoped that the lockdown will last around 14 days, because the 14 days were the first 2 weeks, then it was extended to 21 days. So those who had saved to consume according to their normal menu, food and all the stuff, they had to readjust. So those who are selling food, they have actually reduced prices when everyone was hoping that those who are selling food, they will hike some prices and they will have some good profits. They are counting losses, and food is now cheap. If you go to fresh food, Uganda relies mostly on agriculture. If you look at fresh food, there's what we eat. The staple food of Uganda is called matoke. It's green banana, actually. It's prepared and it's very delicious. Green banana now has dropped around 40% in prices. And these poor people, or the average earners from farming in Uganda, who had hoped that they will have some profits, they actually also on a loss. So the situation is not good, but in terms of health, the government is doing very well, because if you look at our neighboring countries like Kenya, Kenya has around 400 cases, the biggest in the region. They've reported some deaths, around more than 17 deaths. If you look at Tanzania, they're also having some problems because they refused to lock down totally. They left some areas to be open to trade and stopped schools, but the cases are there. And if you look at Rwanda, Rwanda is so small if you compare it to Uganda. They also have some good cases, and they're like around 2 deaths. If you look at Burundi, the smallest neighbor of Uganda, for them, they didn't have cases at first. But we're wondering, how can they be not having cases? Because most of the tourists from France, the French-speaking tourists, could go to Rwanda and Burundi, not Uganda. We share the same game reserves for animals. But it was realized later that they are reporting no cases of COVID-19 because they didn't have test kits, test materials. So when they tested, and their cases are raising high. So we are yet to receive many deaths, but the sick or the patients are alarming. Yes.
Okay. So BAZNAS viewers, or so ladies and gentlemen, and everyone who are watching now our program. So this is a World Zakat Forum Youth special talk with our speaker from Uganda. Our speaker is Namungo Hamzah Kasuja, and he is the head of research. He is the head of research of Uganda Zakat Institution. So just now, our brother, Mr. Namungo Hamzah, Mr. Namung Hamzah Kasuja
Yes.
has explained to us about the recent situation COVID-19 from his country in Uganda. And you've told us that case in Uganda mostly from uh, it's not domestic case, local case. It's a local, so it's from Kenya, right?
Regional.
Or it's
Regional.
so it's regional, so it's regional case. So would you tell us more on how government such lockdown, how government lockdown, and how many days has the lockdown been implemented in Uganda, and to what extent such lockdown in Uganda has disadvantaged its local economy.
Okay.
So, and then now let's relate to how zakat has been utilized,
Okay.
particularly from your institution.
Okay. Well, thank you very good, my brother. Uganda now, it was locked down first for 14 days, 2 weeks. In the first lockdown, the government closed down schools, universities, secondary schools, in all primary schools and kindergarten schools. The argument was that if you leave schools to operate, you leave fertile grounds, or you give a hub for COVID-19 to go rampant. And schools, students had to go home, and all university students all were closed. Mosques were closed and churches were closed. And then as we went on for a week and some days, then we had another presidential address on COVID-19, and cases were rising high. So the government realized that it was very good, or it was important to exercise a total lockdown. So what followed was to lock down all private public transport means. Taxis were closed. For your information, in Uganda, taxis, it's a minibus, smaller vehicle that carries 14 passengers. It's not one passenger or two passengers in smaller ones. It's 14 passengers. So you can imagine letting that sector to operate and giving COVID a lead. So it was closed. In the airport, we have one international airport, other regional airports. It was closed because our first case registered in Uganda came from a Ugandan who had gone to trade in Dubai, in United Arab Emirates. So when he returned, he tested positive, but even before realizing that he could have some COVID-19, he had slipped into the country. So they had to test him and to test the contacts, people who he had contacted, of course, his family. So that's when COVID-19 was realized in Uganda. So when the airport was closed, they had to test all people who had come in a week leading to its closure, because they had set up a testing center around Entebbe. Entebbe is where our international airport is. So most of cases, domestic cases, came from testing at that healthy center. So after that, schools were closed, as I've mentioned, transport was closed. And then private vehicles were left to operate, but provided that you are three people in the vehicle. So after that, again, people misused the advantage. They started carrying some people. You could see someone walking around 70 kilometers because public transport was closed at midnight. The government didn't give any 5 minutes or anything, because the president was saying that if you had given us some hours or 24 hours, the sick people from Kampala, the capital, would transport the sickness or COVID to the village where the elder people live. So the argument was that let's close as it is. So people could walk around 100 kilometers, taking some days hotels were closed and lodges were closed. So if nighttime caught you somewhere, you had to gang up and then stay night there and then move. It was a total war. So after that, cases kept on increasing, and the government decided that let's lock down on all private vehicles. So private vehicles were locked home. People were told to operate within their households. Even our president came out with a video showing us how to do some aerobics from within. He's around 70 years plus, and that was some encouragement from the young people. So we stayed home. He locked down all the sectors that united people. The transport sector, as I've mentioned, schools, they were closed, and then non-essential businesses were closed. For example, if you're selling clothes, you're selling phones, you're selling anything that is non-essential, all businesses were closed, and the military was put on the streets to monitor.
All right.
Food items were left open, clinics or pharmacy were left open. So up to now, what the government did was to give some car stickers for those who had some essential business to do. House of Zakat was given some stickers, like 5 of our vehicles, because in health sector, we have the elderly people we cater for, those who are suffering from diabetes, from high blood pressure. We have people to feed, we've been helping people to eat, and many people have been helping, except those who are in education department because we closed it. So that's how we can move and open some offices right now. Yes, brother.
All right. So, brother, let's. Okay. So, ladies and gentlemen, everywhere you are now watching our program. So, this is World Zakat Forum Youth program special from our speaker from Uganda, our brother Namungo Hamzah. Our brother Namungo Hamzah is from Zakat House Uganda, and he is the head of research there. So we are now discussing how COVID-19 situation in Uganda currently running, and then how government of Uganda has been managing its COVID-19 cases. So my brother Hamzah,
Yes,
I
yes,
am now
brother.
looking at the Worldometers info, and I am opening the total coronavirus cases in Uganda. So in Uganda, the cases, I mean, is not reaching 100 yet. So up
Yes.
now, is it the case is reached to 89, and then it started from March 2020. I mean, yes, from in March 20, it's still zero
March.
case, and then March 2020, it's one case, and then raising up to May to 89 case. And the sharpest one is from the April 19. Yes, from the April 19, from 56 case to April 20 to 79 case. So that is the sharpest. I mean, the hugest, the sharpest one. But if if we look at the trend, of the total cases there in Uganda, I think
Yes.
I can translate it from the figure one in Waldo method. I can translate it that the government of Uganda may succeed its lockdown program, its lockdown effort. So to what extent, to what extent the problem, the consequences of apart from like economic consequences. So would you explain more on like social causes of the government? Because if I'm looking at the trend, I mean, the total is quite good. It's not reaching like 100 and everything. So meaning that the government can manage very well. So, but then it must be paid. It must be paid by many problems, economic consequences and social consequences. So just now you told us about the sum of economic consequences, but we are curious. I'm curious about the social consequences. So before explain more on how zakat, you also have told zakat been utilized there to facing of COVID-19. But let's more first on how the social causes. So brother Namungo, please.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, brother. Yes, it's a very good observation and a very good question. If you look at Uganda, about 15 million of its population are young kids, the young ones
Mm,
who are in school, leave alone those ones who are in university, but we
mm,
count them as being dependent on their parents. So you
mm,
find around more than 50%
mm,
of the population being dependent on their parents. So when you look at the lockdown, the non-essential sectors that the government closed used to it employs a big number of population of Uganda. Most of our population rely on informal and informal sector.
mm,
They don't have like well-defined jobs. They don't have
mm,
like minimum wage payments and all those benefits we see in some developing countries. Someone leaves home, goes to town, he lifts items from the truck in the trading area, and then he earns a living. He's renting, he has kids, he's paying rent, he takes them to school. So there are a lot of challenges that were facing these people. And when the government locked down totally, these people could not earn a living. Some are in small and medium enterprises. We call them micro entrepreneurs. So they rely mostly on people interaction, on interaction P2P. So when you remove that interaction, of course you're removing a profit from them. So they were home. The government, through the Human Rights Commission, one of its commissions, now they are telling us that there's a lot of domestic violence because husbands are home, kids are home. Remember, when kids are at school, you pay school fees, and the school feeds these children. It's
yeah.
only your payment at school that you look at. You don't look at how they eat. So when they are home, many of them, an average household in Uganda has around 6 to 7 family members,
Mm,
father and mother, and the kids, and some distant family member. So you find a husband or a house leader feeding around 6 members without any income. Savings were there, but people were shopping things for only 2 weeks, 14 days, which the government put forward as a lockdown. So when the lockdown was extended, that's when chaos or that's when problems came in the households. We could see on daily news people starving, people walking to police stations. Some politicians were trying to help out, but remember the government or the president declared that whoever is found distributing food other than government, the case to answer will be attempted murder. So socially now, we see some people in prison now facing prison on attempted murder because of distributing of food. So socially, I would say that family members are suffering because there's no income, and we don't know when the lockdown will end. Because today at night, the president is going to address, and he said that we need to do a mass testing, door-to-door testing. Yeah. So it means it could extend the lockdown, and you see that many people will suffer. What the government did socially was to launch food distribution
mm,
by the government. So they go door to door with the government vehicles and the soldiers. It's a military soldiers who are distributing food. They assess according to how your house looks like. If you're living in a good house with a very good painted, they will say you're rich. And we've seen people who are not getting food, saying that we don't have jobs, we don't have money, but because we are living in good houses, the government is skipping us. So they are giving out to poor people, food to poor people, 6 kilograms per house. But that is like 30 days back. So where they gave out food first, now they're receiving calls from those areas that you give us more, yet the budget was so little. So the food program is there. But when Ramadan set in, we approached the government as House of Zakat because we are seeing Muslims who could benefit from mosques. Mosques used to feed or are feeding Muslims during Ramadan. Whoever doesn't have iftar or food could just go see a imam, and then a rich person or an institution like House of Zakah could take their food for the Imam to distribute. So the mosques were closed completely, and now something had to be done. So we approached the government, and after some time, a few days, we were given a permission to give out food to our Muslim brothers who are observing Ramadan. But the capacity of House of Zakah is not bigger than the government is, because I will tell you that the government was supposed to give out food for around 1 million people in the urban areas, because they were saying if you're living in the villages, the lockdown doesn't apply much, because you walk to your garden, you dig, you cultivate food, and then you come back home. And there will be no COVID-19 there. So if you live in urban areas, you have to receive food. But since then, it's around a month now, it's around 13% of the 1 million people have received food. So the 87% have not yet been catered for. So House of Zakah and Waqf Uganda is smaller than the government, and we've been helping those who are in dire need. The elderly one, buying nutritious milk for the children, because a family calls you that we can have one meal a day, but our 1-year-old child cannot miss milk. So we found ourselves distributing some cash through mobile online setup, and at the same time giving out food. So far, that's the situation socially.
All right. So,
Yes.
so that's a very informative. That's a very informative answer. So, ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen, and sisters and brothers, wherever you are, we are now watching World Zakat Forum Youth Talk with BAZNAS TV. So, we are now having our speaker from Uganda, Mr. Namungo Hamzah. Mr. Namungo Hamzah is the head of research of Uganda Zakat Institution. So Mr. Uganda just now telling us about how social consequence, social issue has been occurring in Uganda, and the extent to which about the social issue. And then I got the information that the domestic violence is rising. The cases of domestic violence is rising. So this is very interesting because just recently I also read in newspaper and many newspaper and then headlines that not only in Uganda but also in countries in other countries like this domestic violence in a household has been rising like maybe 40 by 40% since the lockdown. I think there is a relation between these cases, like I mean domestic violence, with the informal sector. So when we are
Of
talking
course.
about informal sector, this informal sector is the most hit by the COVID-19. And when you look at to Indonesia's informal sector, so this sector like small and micro enterprises sector and the people who are working in vulnerable job back in 2019 were recorded to reach like 60 million people. 60 million people of Indonesian are earning money from vulnerable jobs. So I guess there's a relation between such these vulnerable jobs and uh, the domestic violence, the violence in the family during the lockdown. Let's go back to Uganda perspective. How the government, I mean, or NGOs there manage such this issue, the issue of domestic violence.
Okay. As I've mentioned earlier, the government locked down non-essential sectors, and the NGO sector was one of those that were rated non-essential. So NGOs were not operating except the Red Cross or the Red Crescent that the government engaged to help out in distribution of food. But again, if you look at the effects or how the lockdown had to be dealt with, the government needed more of a humanitarian touch when distributing this food. If you look at the distribution itself, they were using army officers, of course, the minister, the office of the prime minister, through the disaster and preparedness section. Of course, they were there in the distribution of food, but the fact that it's the army taking over or taking on the distribution of food did not resonate well with the problem we are facing in terms of humanitarian. So it was missing, but I will not say that it's the reason why food has not reached people, because the speed, the taking orders, and the agility of the army officers is good. It's quite good. They have been trying their best. If the humanitarian organizations are not many that were left to operate, even the international ones who used to send in some aid to especially Muslims observing Ramadan, they have reduced to send, or some did not send, because no one was going to distribute that food, depending on the government lockdown. So, as House of Zakah, I'll mention House of Zakah because the information doesn't flow well now during this time. What you see on TV is COVID-19, how the government is responding, and some international cases. So, what we did as a humanitarian, because I read House of Zakah as a humanitarian section, was to engage the Prime Minister's office through the Ministry of, the Department of Disaster and Preparedness, which is spearheading the program the government launched. For your information, the government launched a national task force on COVID-19, and the president called on the public to donate to government, or the public to join the struggle for life and death, as the government mentioned. And we are seeing now a new dimension of the public donating more to the government. We're seeing corporate entities donating brand new vehicles to transport samples of COVID test samples, transporting health personnel from here and there. And we are seeing people donating food items to the government, because the government first they had to buy food worth 75 billion Uganda shillings to be distributed to the poor people. That's around 20 million US dollars. But then the public also joined by donating food to the government. Many people, even the school kids, even the people with disabilities, everyone came to the mercy of the government and were distributing. And the House of Zakah and Work for Uganda actually, we also donated around 4 tons of maize flour to the National Task Force. But we had some comments from the public that you should have given this food to Muslims, you should given this food to mosques. But remember, mosques were closed, and the government said that whoever is found distributing food would be charged of attempted murder. So when we took our food to the government, to the preparedness ministry, we asked them to give us permission to distribute what we had in our Zakah food care program, and also to give permission to other Muslim non-government organizations to give out what they had to the people, because people are not calling the government, they were calling non-government organization. As I mentioned, that the humanitarian touch was needed in this fight against hunger, because people were saying that COVID will not reach us because the government has protected us, but hunger is another disease or virus that is going to kill us because food is not coming. So non-government organizations, most of them were locked, and those who did not have, or innovatively did not design programs to not operate, except a few, and House of Zakah is one of them that launched the Zakat food care program, which we will talk about if you give me an opportunity, brother.
All right. So, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we are now on air from two countries, from Indonesia and from Uganda. So, in Indonesia, it's now almost 5 p.m. We need 15 minutes more for 5 p.m. and we are waiting for our break fasting for 1 hour more. So, hopefully, you in Uganda, I guess it still took many hours maybe still took many
6
hours
hours.
to still took 6 hours to breakfast. So still spirit because we still have like maybe 30 minutes. I mean 20 more minutes for this talk. So ladies and gentlemen, we are now on air. We are with a World Zakat Forum Youth Talk, special talk from Uganda with Mr. Namungo Hamzah. Mr. Namungo Hamzah is the head of research from Uganda Uganda Wakaf and Zakat institution. So, brother Hamza, let's now more talk
Yes,
about
brother.
the institution of Zakat. So, is that institution? It's an NGO or a government institution? I mean, the Zakat institution in Uganda. So, is it
Okay.
private or it's a government?
It's a private organization. It's
So,
not government. Uganda does not have a law on zakah or wakaf. The government is non-partisan or is a secular government. Secular
secular.
government means every religion, secular, every religion can exercise its rights, or it can do whatever it wants, provided that what it does, it's within the laws governing the country. So House of Zakah is registered as a registered organization under the Company Act, Uganda
Oh,
Companies
camping.
Act, and
Yes.
it's limited by guarantee.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was set
Yeah.
up by 21 members.
Mm. Yes. So, okay, that's very interesting to have an Islamic
21 members.
institution. All right. Okay,
Mm,
so that's very interesting to have an Islamic institution in a secular country like Uganda. So how this like institution, I mean Wakaf and Zakat institution, during this COVID-19 survive, particularly from the administration. I mean from the Zakat collection. So how Zakat collection has been affected this far during this COVID-19? Is it decreasing or is it increasing with the if we compare with the year to year? For example, last April. So how about in last April in 2019? Is there any significant decrease or increase? So I think we can discuss on this now.
yeah. There is, of course, there is a significant decrease
Mhm.
uh, during the collection. We could talk about April. It's a very good month because the lockdown started around 22nd March, 18th
Mhm.
March.
Mhm.
March was fine, but if you look at April, Zakat collection have decreased,
Mhm.
especially collections from the corporate Zakat payers, or what we term as Class A Zakat payers. Those who pay around 2 millions and above, they have decreased. But interestingly, we've seen an increase in Sadakat.
Mhm.
Sadakat
MashaAllah.
has greatly increased.
Mhm.
When you look, actually, we've seen even non-Muslims donating Sadakat to House of Zakah and Wakaf
MashaAllah.
Uganda.
Mhm.
Just 2 days back, there is a reverend who
Mhm.
contributed food worth 1 ton to House of Zakat and
Mhm.
Wakf Uganda because he felt that charity is humanity. You don't need to be too religious, you don't need to be a Muslim or a Christian to
Mhm.
see that people are dying of hunger. But coincidence, this reverend was saved by Muslim during the war in 1970s. He was dying and was rescued by Muslim. He was taken to school by Muslim. He studied up to PhD by Muslim. So he told us that it was important for him to share with Muslims in this COVID-19. So zakah, as we've mentioned, has decreased. First, because traditional collection channels of coming to office
Mhm.
were closed because the government said no movement. Even the banks that were left open, they are opening, but the high net worth individuals cannot move or walk to the bank. Firstly, health-wise, they fear to contract COVID-19. Secondly, when high net worth individuals are paying zakah, they want to have that personal touch, the one-on-one. They expect to be prayed for, the dua, they expect they expect an explanation. They have to be catered for on one-on-one basis. So we see them dropping quite remarkably, but we are registering many these smaller zakat payers, you could say those ones who are above nisab, they are very many, and sadaqat is increasing because what is affecting people now is lack of food. So people are contributing to feed people. And another trend we've seen is that some rich people call into office and say, in my locality, because in my locality, I'm seeing people are knocking on my gate. They're asking for food. People are calling me asking for food. So the zakat amount I was going to pay to you, I want to buy food and feed these people. Because if I don't feed them, the government will come arrest me for inside, for having people around.
All
So
right.
if okay, the government will come and arrest me because people are many on my gate. So we see people now want to distribute zakah individually.
All right, brother.
Okay,
Brother, that's very.
okay. Yes, we see what we see now is we're seeing people, the high net worth individuals, wanting to pay zakah or to convert their zakah into foodstuffs and give out to people. And our Sharia board or our Sharia committee has been busy now explaining to them that you can do this and this. And that's a challenge. I think that's something that needs to be studied. It's something that needs to be studied.
All right, brother.
Yes, brother.
So, okay. We are now
Mm,
having Q and question and answer session. Ladies and gentlemen, my sister and brothers of Muslim,
mm,
wherever you are now watching at BAZNAS TV, we are now conducting a talk with World Zakat Forum Youth Talk Series. So we now have a question. We already have a question. So let's start from our brother Ali Chamani Al Ansari. He asked whether how is the COVID-19 testing in Uganda? Is it sufficient?
mm. Okay, COVID-19 testing in Uganda, I would say it's sufficient because on average, the Ministry of Health of Uganda tests around 2,700 people per day. And yesterday, when one result or one sample came back positive, it was around 2,700 and some quite small numbers that were tested. And so far, since COVID started, the government has so far tested around 30,000 samples of individuals. So if you can now compare 89 cases against 30,000 tests. So what now the government has put forward, they're saying that, actually they're not saying, but the president mentioned that we are going to do a mass testing. They want to test the public because they think COVID might be there already. Yesterday, some of the police officers manning the border who are interacting with these Kenyan truck drivers in Masindi district, actually four of those cases, 89, four of them are police officers. They were tested and they were showing some signs. So we are going for the lockdown testing activity or testing operation is somehow successful.
All right. Uh, you all right. So meaning that the government has a sufficient testing. So what about the test? Is it
Yes.
I mean is it rapid testing or the test that require laboratorium work? So is it rapid testing? So with the result we can see the result at the same time, at the
No,
minutes later.
it's not at the same time.
Or
Yeah, 40 minutes. After 40
yeah.
minutes, you
So
can
that's
see the results. 40 minutes. But there are some hospitals that are very far. Uganda is far.
oh, I
So
see.
those one can take a day because testing centers are not many. Yes.
Yeah. So what's more interesting about the Wakaf and Zakat institution in Uganda, especially your institution, is that I think they successfully campaign the role of donation. I mean, they successfully campaign zakat, whatever it terms like zakat and sadaqah and wakaf to its non-Muslim population, because you mentioned that wakaf in zakat in Uganda. I mean, they are non-Muslim. Even non-Muslim wants to sadaqah through the institution of zakat in Uganda. So actually, this is very interesting. But let's going to move to the question from Bashir KK about the masjid in Uganda. All the masjid shut down? I mean, being closed in Uganda currently, or several masjid maybe in rural areas, most masjids still open, because in Indonesia, masjid in the city centers are mostly closed, all closed, for sure. But the masjids in rural areas, they still operating. So how about in Uganda? All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have technical issues with our brother from Uganda. So, this is the World Zakat Forum Youth Talks with special topic about how zakat, about facing off the consequences of COVID-19, and particularly how like Muslim countries, like Muslim majority countries, zakat, utilizing zakat, utilizing zakat in facing of COVID-19. And we are talking from Uganda with Namungo Hamzah Kasuja. So Mr. Namungo Hamzah Kasuja is now again with us. We still have many questions left, like three more questions. So let's talk about. So let's answer the question from Madam Yasmina Franke from South Africa. Madam Yasmina Franke, asking you whether you are planning any research on the impact of COVID-19 and the impact on zakat payments. I mean, whether there is an impact from on zakat payment by COVID-19. Would you explain this? This is the question from Madam Yasmina Franke. Are you planning that research? Yeah, I guess Mr. Our brother Namungo is muted. Maybe you can unmute first. You can unmute first. Unmute. It's mute. Ah, okay. It's okay. All right. We have a bit technical issue, but now we are live from Indonesia and from Uganda. From Uganda, we have Mr. Namungo Hamzah Kasuja. He is the head of research and training from Zakat and Wakaf House of Uganda. Mr. Uganda just now has explained us many things about how the government of Uganda has been facing the COVID-19 and the number of cases in Uganda, and how the government taking or managing, or I mean combating the COVID-19, and how the contribution of zakat being utilized, being actualized to face the consequence of COVID-19. Mr. Namungo Hamzah had just elaborated on this. And then we still have many questions. We still have like two questions left from Aliyu Tahirmud. Aliyu Tahirmud and then our brother Bashir KK. They are asking whether uh, zakat, general government and public acceptance of zakat and wakaf in Uganda. He is asking, he asked, think about this. And then also from Basir Kike, did zakat team distributing kits to the health workers? And then asking a specific question. But brother, I think you still on mute. You are still mute. Yes, you are still mute. Hello. Okay. It's ladies and gentlemen, we are now watching the World Zakat Forum Youth program. World Zakat Forum with a special talk from Youth Zakat professional. And today we are actually planning to have another speaker from Sierra Leone, but due to unforeseen circumstance, which is technical issue, so we could not proceed with another speaker, which is our brother, which is Mr. Koroma from Sierra Leone. Due to technical issue, unfortunately, we can proceed with him. But now uh, we are having with us our speaker from Uganda, Mr. Namungo Hamzah who just explained how, in a specific way, how zakat has been utilized, has been distributed to assist the local government in facing of the consequences of COVID-19.
Okay, brother. I think
Okay,
that my audio is back.
all right. So, brother, we have still two questions
Yes.
to answer. So,
Okay.
uh, with regard zakat, one is asking you who he is Madam Yasmina Franke and from South Africa.
Okay.
She asked you whether you are planning a research on the impact of zakat on the zakat payment. Maybe there is a relation or there is an impact, but maybe for sure. But you can answer.
Yes. Yes, we are planning to do a research about it. Actually, we are trying to look at the three triple P or three bottom line model in finance: people, profit, and planet. How has the COVID-19 impacted people's profits? Of course, with profit you can pay zakah. And how has COVID-19 impacted people's lives socially? And how has COVID-19 impacted the planet? Because what is interesting in Uganda here, if you look at the streets, if you look at the lawns, if you look at the street gardens and everything, the atmosphere is very good. The gardens are okay. The contamination is less. And if you look at the city now, if you are to take pictures or if you are to sell tourism to the international people, you take pictures and they just flock in the country. Because without people in the city center, without people in public places, we're seeing green all the way. So it's something less about COVID-19, but we are planning to do a research about it. How has it impacted people's profits? With profits, zakah you can pay, and how it has affected socially, looking at the domestic violence, looking at how our collections have, in zakah specifically, have reduced from high net worth individuals. I said earlier that these people have been calling us, asking that I'm seeing a lot of people knocking on my gate. I'm receiving many calls from local imams. The zakah I was going to pay to you directly to pass through the channels back to the mosque. I'm going to cut the bureaucracy. I'm going to buy food and give to these people because they are crying. So our Sharia board has been dealing with them, and some have been left to do that because remember we don't have a law; it's voluntary. Someone just decides to pay zakat to you without enforcement. So we've seen some people buying food in zakat money and distributing it to those people. And no wonder you'll see around 95%, if not 100, of zakah applications that are coming to House of Zakat are those asking for food, for survival, actually.
All right.
No one is asking for business, no one is asking for capital because there's nothing to be done. Everyone is asking for food. And most of them are these small and medium enterprises, all people doing work in informal sector. And those who are paying zakah just above the nisab line, because our nisab is based on silver, it's 1.47 million Ugandan shillings, around 300 something US dollars, depending on the price of silver on the world market. Those have been frequenting here asking for food. So it means that COVID-19 has affected greatly those who are in formal sector, those ones who are just above the nisab line. So we are hoping to do a research about it, and we have written something about it. If there could be some collaborations with Sanzaf, we are open to do that because I think the effects could be quite similar. Yes, brother.
Yes, so that's a very interesting. So that's the question. So, Madam Yasmina Franke, that was the answer. So hopefully there will be future collaboration, maybe between Madam between South Africa and then with our Zakat Uganda with our brother Namungo Hamzah, and maybe also with us with BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies, because also we are currently such research, but we are what we aim to do is to investigate, to study how zakat worldwide under what zakat for member countries has been distributing zakat during this COVID-19. But that's going to be, inshallah, that's going to be behind talk. Let's talk this more on this. So now let's move to another question. We have the question from Alyuta Hermod. He is asking, how is the general government and public acceptance of zakat and wakaf in Uganda? But I think this question is, you already answered it, because many people, many non-Muslim people, they actually pay the donation through the zakat wakaf in Uganda, and I think that's describe how the local people, the Uganda people, they are accepting such the notion of zakat. I mean, sodakoh in Uganda. But
Of course.
can you explain more?
Yeah, of course. People here, our core values are adherence to Sharia principles, accountability, professionalism. When you don't have a government enforcement, or you don't have a zakat law, and you entirely depend on voluntary payment of zakat, you have to exercise high degree of accountability, high degree of efficiency and effectiveness in your programs. The reason why people, the general public, are giving zakat, house of zakat. Of course, there are some other smaller zakat institutions, because about 170 years Islam has been in Uganda. We did not have any zakat institution for the last 160 years. It means house of zakat is just 10 years old. So within 4 to 3 years back, we've seen some smaller institutions of zakat coming up, but people are focusing more on house of zakat because, one, we are accountable. Secondly, there's transparency. What we do it in the light. In the on social media, on radio stations, on TVs, international collaborations like the World Zakat Forum. We are there, we are participating, however smaller we may be. So people are generally accepting, but at the same time, there are those that are not inclined towards paying institutional zakat, because they say that what has been collected should just be channeled directly to the poor. So they give out zakat on individual basis. So there are very many, quite many, because the potential of zakat in Uganda, we are yet to research about it. We don't have quantitative information. But if you look at the giving trend, the religiosity of Muslims in Uganda, how they preserve the Islamic values, how they fight so hard when the Islam has been violated, you could leverage on that and say that the potential of zakat is very huge, but we need to engage more the public to pay their zakat.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. That hopefully answered the question from our brother Aliyu Tahir Muhammad. And now we all have a question, or the last question before we close our program. So, brother Hamzah, can you explain about how the contribution of Zakat team to the PPE kits and the health workers of Uganda? I mean, maybe is there any program related to such distribution specialized at helping
Okay.
care workers or things like that?
Okay. Thank you, brother. What, as I mentioned earlier, that the government launched a national task force to engage the public to donate towards the government. But the PPE you mentioned, the protective gear, I think in hospitals, at first the government did not have enough, and they had to be brought in from China. Remember the private means of transport, air and trucks. were locked by the government. So the private sector could not engage more in importing these items. It was the government. But again, we had some factories in Uganda that started manufacturing them. And after manufacturing, the corporate companies bought a lot of them and distributed to the government. So what was left? Remember, I told you that the non-government organizations were classified non-essential sectors by the government. So at first, there was no way any NGO or any institution, humanitarian institution, could move and open their offices and process their funds to donate towards the government. But later, the government loosened and gave some permission for them to operate. But what we decided to tackle, or what we decided to help the government with, was food, because most of the applications were about food, and we gave around four tons of food to the government. So the PPE, the government has a lot in plenty, but they were given out by corporate companies who could procure many of them. So for us, we gave out food, and inshallah, if there's any way we could help the government earthwise, we could. But as we speak now, the Ministry of Health is well equipped, and they are not in need of any PPE now.
All
Thank
right.
you, bro.
Okay. So, brother, thank you so much. That was the last question, and then we are about to finish. So, ladies and gentlemen, whoever you are, and then our sister brothers also who are now watching BAZNAS TV, we are now on air on World Zakat Forum Special at Yatok. We are now have, and we just finished. We have our brother, our speaker from Uganda, and he is Mr. Namungo Hamzah Kasuja. He is the head of uh, Research and Zakat Institution from Uganda House of Wakaf and Zakat. So when it take to conclusion, yes, it is a very challenging time for all of us, especially Muslim, because now we are Ramadan, and at the same time we are facing the consequence of COVID-19. It's not only the economic consequence, but in emerging economies like our country, like Indonesia, like Uganda, uh, informal sector hit the most by this COVID-19. And thank you so much. It is a very insightful discussion from Uganda perspective, how the government of Uganda and especially how Zakat has been used, has been utilized in facing of COVID-19. Thank you so much, our brother Namungo Hamzah Kasuja. And I am Fahmi Ali Hudaefi. I am Fahmi Ali Hudaefi, and from BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies. For your information, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, our our institution, BAZNAS Center of Strategic Studies is currently receiving the journal for the volume number five. Volume 5, number 1, 2020, the International Journal of Zakat. We are calling for papers that address several topics like financial ratios of Zakat institution, and then the contribution of Zakat to the sustainability of clean water and proper sanitation, and a measure of Muzaki's ability in Zakat literacy, the role of Zakat in mitigating the apostasy, the development of Zakat literature, the use of relevant technology in Zakat institution, the impact of Zakat distribution on poverty alleviation. Yes, now I'm explaining the topic that International Journal of Zakat is expecting the topic. So the last two topic is the international contribution among Zakat institutions to address the issue of global poverty, and also we have new topics that how Zakat institution worldwide has been maneuvering via administration, via managerial to taking off to combating the COVID-19. So, and then moving now to International Conference of Zakat. Inshallah, we from Business Center of Strategic Studies, along with the Ministry of Religious Affairs of Indonesia And with several universities local, we are to conduct the fourth international conference of zakat that inshallah will be held from 7 to 9 October 2020 in Surabaya. So the fourth international conference of zakat, the fourth international conference of zakat, uh, we are we are raising the topic of Zakatech for inclusive development, and this Zakatech for inclusive development means that meaning that how far technology has been utilized in zakat administration in many countries, especially to address the inclusive development. And of course, this the fourth icons is free of charge. And then there are many topics there are many topics of interest that maybe ladies and gentlemen now watching us can send their paper. So this the first one is the recent technology best practice of zakat collection and distribution. And then we also have the fundamental issue of Sharia compliance of zakat institution. We expect the paper that can address how the Sharia compliance, the Sharia governance framework for zakat institution. And the next one, we have the role of zakat institution in responding to the global issues that relate to the fundamental of zakat. Also, in this context, we address like women's studies, the role of zakat in empowering underprivileged community, zakat and sustainable development goals, and many other topics, including zakat and COVID-19. So this is going to be interesting. And also, we have the topic of the performance of zakat institution, the contemporary issues related to the management of zakat, and the last one is accounting issues of zakat institution. So, ladies and gentlemen, the audience of BAZNAS TV and World Zakat Forum, wherever you are watching now, so please you may register yourself to participate in the fourth international conference of zakat. You can visit to our conf bay, or you can directly visit to iconsbaznas.com. So thank you so much. Thank you for your attention, ladies and gentlemen, wherever you are, and thank you for those who are watching for asking the question. Alhamdulillah, we are come to the end. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.